Plan stakeholder engagement. Our main goal here is to create a stakeholder engagement plan that will guide us on how to engage the stakeholder. Take a look at the screen here. We have something called a stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. This is a rather important document that is used to map where the stakeholders currently are in their engagement and where we as the project team desire them to be. Our mission is to create a plan for how to effectively keep stakeholders engaged. Let's take a look at our inputs to this process. The first input is the project charter. The project charter contains information regarding the objectives of the project, the purpose of the project, and the success criteria that may need to be considered when planning how to engage stakeholders. Our next input is the project management plan. The components of the project management plan that might be helpful here include the resource management plan. You definitely want to know roles and responsibilities of the team and other stakeholders that may be in the register. You also need your communications management plan because it gives you guidance on strategies that are best suited for each stakeholder based on the current information. And you also have the risk management plan. The risk management plan may contain thresholds or risk attitudes of the stakeholders. Understanding stakeholders' risk tolerances could better help your stakeholder engagement strategy. The next input here is project documents. Various project documents exist, you know by now, but we have the assumptions log, change log, and issue log mentioned. We also have the project schedule, risk register, and stakeholder register. My advice, once again, don't cram this stuff. You're not going to get namby-pamby questions asking you which sub-bullets are under this topic, but you just need to understand the logic behind having project documents as an input to this process. The next input is agreements. These could be contracts between the performing organization and sellers, suppliers, vendors, and also bear in mind that those in the procurement department managing these should also be looked at as stakeholders. We have our usual suspects, EEFs and OPAs. The enterprise environmental factors that we think about here, again, organizational culture, political climate, personnel administration policies, and very important, stakeholder risk appetites. How much risk is a stakeholder willing to take on in pursuit of the project's objectives? Project managers need to know that. We could also have global or regional trends. We could have geographic distribution of facilities and resources. Under organizational process assets, policies and procedures for carrying out this process, corporate policies regarding issues, risks, data management, any standard guidelines for the exchange and storage of information. Remember, we're dealing with stakeholders. There's going to be communication going back and forth. What are the retention policies in the firm and so on? All of these need to be considered. Software tools needed to support effective stakeholder engagement could also be part of the OPAs here. Let's talk about our tools and techniques. Expert judgment. Expert judgment refers to expertise in the political environment, understanding the power play in the organization, the environment and culture of the firm, and understanding communication means and strategies. A big one is knowledge from previous projects and knowledge and experience working with the stakeholders on previous projects. The next tool and technique is data gathering. Data gathering for this process could include benchmarking. The results of stakeholder analysis could be compared with information from other firms or other projects that are considered to be world-class. So say the PMI. Our next tool and technique is data analysis. Under data analysis, we could have assumptions and constraint analysis to ensure that these assumptions and constraints are indeed valid. We could have root cause analysis to identify the underlying reasons for a poor level of support, or maybe even a high level of support of stakeholders. And we can use this information to choose the appropriate strategy to get them engaged as we need them to be on the project. Our next tool and technique is decision making. Various decision making approaches exist when considering stakeholders. We could approach this by ranking stakeholders from the most influential to the least influential. Some project managers rank stakeholders as he or she who shouts the loudest, gets the most attention. But in all seriousness, we do need to assess our stakeholder needs. We do need to rank our stakeholders, and we do need to rank them from those that have the highest level of influence being prioritized at the top of the list. Remember, our stakeholder analysis uses the power interest grid, those who we monitor, those who we keep satisfied, those who we manage close, and those who we keep informed. You need to know this breakdown for your exam. Very important. Our next tool and technique here is data representation. Under data representation, I would like to call out mind mapping and the stakeholder engagement assessment matrix I talked about previously. When we mind map, we are trying to visually organize information about stakeholders and their relationship to each other. You might want to look up mind map. A picture, as they say, is worth 1,000 words. So take a look at a mind map and you'll immediately know what the PMI is talking about here. The other one, as I mentioned, is the Stakeholder Engagement Assessment Matrix. It shows you where the stakeholders are and where you want them to be. C stands for current. They are currently unaware or currently resistant or currently neutral. But D stands for desired, where you really want them to be. You want them to be in a supportive role. You want them to be in a leading role sometimes. Our next tool and technique here is meetings. The meeting of the minds to glean information, to decide upon things to be done on the project, and to come out with our output, the stakeholder engagement plan. Let's talk about the stakeholder engagement plan really quickly. The stakeholder engagement plan could include the desired and current engagement levels of stakeholders as documented in the Stakeholder Engagement Assessment Matrix. It could also include scope and impact of change to stakeholders. Also here, we have identified interrelationships and project overlap between stakeholders. Also here, we could have the method for updating the stakeholder engagement plan. I would advise you to read this up in the PMBOK guide, as you may get questions about this on your exam. And that concludes the plan stakeholder engagement process.